So good day. Our lesson today will be all about balancing equations. So magbabalance tayo ng chemical equations. Ang chemical equations, dahil nga sa conservation of mass, ay ibig sabihin na kung ano man ang mass dito, kung ay dapat na pareho dito. Pero kung mapapansin nyo sa chemical equation na to, kung saan ang hydrogen gas ay nag-react with oxygen gas at nag-produce ng H2O, which is basically water, makikita nyo na dito ay may dalawang hydrogen, habang dito may dalawang hydrogen. Tama yun. Habang dito may dalawang oxygen, pero dito iisa lamang ang oxygen. So, paano natin to ayusin? How can we fix this? The only way to solve this problem is through balancing equations. Magbabalance tayo, ibabalance natin ang chemical equations na to para yung mass dito sa kabila ay pareho dito sa kabila. This side of the chemical equations is called the reactant side. This is the reactant side. This is the product side. Ito ay product side dahil ito yung napuproduce kapag nag-react itong dalawa. The addition sign means react with. So the hydrogen gas react with oxygen, producing water. In order to balance this equation, we should first list the amount of atoms there is. So, ilan atom ba yung nagko-comprise? Ilang atom yung bumubuo sa side na ito at sa side na ito? Let's first start with the hydrogen atoms. How many hydrogen atoms are here? We have 2. How many oxygen atoms are here? We have 2. Here, we have 2 hydrogen atoms too. And here, we have 1. So, in order to balance this equation, we should put coefficients. Coefficients are numbers beside the compound or the element. So, if we have 1 oxygen here, and we have 2 here, we should make this 2 oxygens. In order to make it 2 oxygen, we should put a coefficient here of 2. Putting a coefficient here means matadouble ang amount ng hydrogen and oxygen in the product side. Which means now, instead of having 2 hydrogens before, we now have here 4. Now, we also have 2 oxygens. So, our oxygens are already equal. Ngayon, ang next problem natin is we now have an equal hydrogen. On the other side, we have 2, while on the other side, we have 4. Para ma-resolve to, we should now again put a coefficient beside the element. What is the coefficient that we should put beside oxygen in order to reach 4? We simply divide 4 by the subscript of hydrogen, which is 2. 4 divided by 2 is 2. So, the coefficient that we should put beside hydrogen is 2. 2 times 2 will give us 4 hydrogen atoms. As you can see, we now have equal hydrogen atoms and we now have equal oxygen atoms. We have 4 hydrogen atoms, we have 2 oxygen atoms. And this is the balance equation for the reaction of hydrogen gas with oxygen to produce water. So that is how you balance a simple chemical reaction. Now, our next chemical reaction that we have to balance is nitrogen gas reacting with hydrogen gas producing ammonia or NH3. Now, in order to balance this equation, we should again list the number of atoms dito sa reactant at ilista ulit natin yung number of atoms dito sa product. Ano yung mga atoms na nasa reactant? We have nitrogen and hydrogen. On the product side, we also have nitrogen at meron din tayong hydrogen. The next thing that we should do is to count ilang nitrogen atoms ang andito sa reactant side. We have 2. Ilang hydrogen atoms? We have 2. Dito naman sa kabila, how many nitrogen atoms do we have? We have 1. Ilang hydrogen atom naman ang meron tayo? We have 3. Ngayon, as you can see, yung nitrogen atom dito sa reactant side ay hindi equal sa nitrogen atom nitong product side. Dito may dalawang nitrogen, dito may isang nitrogen. And it also applies to the hydrogen atoms. Hindi rin sila equal sa reactant and product side. So how can we solve this problem? Of course, we need to balance it through coefficients. Again, ang mga coefficient ay sila yung mga number na nilalagay natin sa gilid. Nilalagay natin sa gilid ng element or ng compound na nasa chemical reaction. So, in order to balance this, ilang beses mo ito times si 1 para makakuha ka ng 2. Of course, ito times 2 mo to, diba? So, you will now put a 2 here because you times 2 the nitrogen. Now, instead of having only 1 nitrogen before, we will now have here 2. Kasi si nitrogen dito isa lang at dito may times 2. So, we have 2. So, makita mo, si nitrogen, the 2 nitrogen are now balanced. So, we can also see that hydrogen has been also affected. Kung makikita mo, hindi lang si nitrogen ang na times 2. Na times 2 rin si hydrogen. Itong 3 times 2 ni hydrogen. So, si hydrogen ay magiging 6. So, we'll now have 6 hydrogen. And si hydrogen sa reactant side is hindi equal sa hydrogen ni product side. So, ilang beses mo ito times si 2 para makakuha ng 6. Or simply, 6 divided by 2. And that will be 3. So, si hydrogen dito, ito times mo sa 3. And 2 times 3 will be 6. And since ito times mo siya 3 times, we'll put 3 here. And now, the hydrogen on the reactant side will be comprised of 6 atoms. And as you can see, si nitrogen dito sa product and reactant side and si hydrogen in both product and reactant side are equal. We have 2 nitrogens here, we have 2 nitrogens in the product side, and we have both 6 hydrogen in the product and reactant side. So, it means that the chemical equation is now balanced. So, this is the balanced chemical equation for the reaction of nitrogen with hydrogen gas to produce ammonia. And this will be our next example. We have CH4 or methane reacting with oxygen producing carbon dioxide and water. So, in chemistry, when a hydrocarbon reacts with oxygen and produces carbon dioxide and water, it's usually called a combustion reaction, but that is out of the topic. So, out of the topic na yun, it's just a segue. So, let's balance this equation. Okay, so, ang una natin gagawin para makita natin kung balance ba itong equation na ito, ay ililista natin ang lahat ng mga atom na nasa reactant side at product side. At kapag may dalawang atom na hindi equal, ibig sabihin na hindi yun balance. Just like what we did in the previous examples. So, dito sa una, we have carbon. Meron din tayong hydrogen. Ito. At meron din tayong oxygen. Dito naman sa kabila, we have carbon. We have hydrogen. Ito. And we have oxygen. Ito. Dito sa kabila, ilan yung carbon atoms na nandito sa reactant side? Again, yung tawag dito ay reactant side, ito ay product side. So, ilang carbon atoms ang nandito sa reactant side? We only have 1. And ilang hydrogen atoms ang nandito? We have 4. Oxygen atoms, we have 2. Dito naman sa product side, how many carbon atoms do we have? We have 1. Ilang hydrogen atoms? We have 2, diba? How many oxygen atoms? We have 2 here on carbon dioxide, and we have 1 here on water. So, 1 plus 2, we have 3 oxygen atoms. So, as you can see, our carbon atoms are equal. But our hydrogen atoms and oxygen atoms, hindi sila equal. As you can see, meron tayo dito 4 na hydrogen, meron tayo dito sa kabila na 2. At dito naman meron tayong 2 at meron tayong 3 oxygen atoms. Hindi sila equal. And in order to fix this, we should balance this equation. So, ang hydrogen dito ay 4, ang hydrogen dito ay 2. So, ilang beses mo ito times ang 2 para maging equal siya dun sa 4 sa reactant side. So, we divide 4 by 2, that will be 2. So, ito times mo ito sa 2. So, pag times mo siya sa 2, maglalagay ka rin dito ng 2, which is the coefficient. And dahil 2 times 2 ang nakalagay dito, ang hydrogen atoms na natin ay 4 na. So, ang ating hydrogen atoms ay equal na. Pero kung mapapansin nyo, nung nag-times tayo dito ng 2 kay hydrogen, naapektuhan si oxygen. Kaya kung tinimes natin ng 2 si hydrogen, times din natin ng 2 si oxygen. 2 times 1, that will be 2. So, dalawa na ang atom dito. At dito dalawa din. So, ito, 2 plus 2 na. And that will be 4. So, 4 na ang atoms natin dito. So, kung 4 na ang atoms natin dito at dito ay dalawa, ilang beses mo ita-times si 2 para makuha ang 4? Again, it is 4 divided by 2. And that will be 2. So, ita-times 2 mo siya dito. And 2 times 2. Dahil tinimes mo siya dito, maglalagay ka rin dito ng 2 sa katabi ng oxygen. And 2 times 2 will be 4. If we will review all the number of atoms, they are now all equal. As you can see, meron tayo ditong isang carbon. At sa kabila naman, sa product side, meron din tayong isang carbon. Dito naman meron tayong 4 at meron din tayong 4 dito. Dito may 4 at meron din ditong 4. Then therefore, this equation is balanced. So this is the balance equation of methane reacting with oxygen, producing carbon dioxide and water. So that is how you balance an equation. Again, you first list the atoms involved in the reaction, first in the reactant side, next to the product side. And when you see atoms that are not equal, kapag hindi sila equal yung mga atoms na yon, ang gagawin mo, ibabalance mo sila. At paano sila ibabalance? Maglalagay ka ng coefficients. Diba, i-divide mo lang yung maliit na number dun sa malaking number para makuha mo. At kapag pareho na sila lahat, therefore, yung equation mo ay balance na.